I want to read to you something from The Little Prince. People where you live, the little prince said, grow 5,000 roses in one garden. Yet they don't find what they're looking for. They don't find it, I answered. And yet what they're looking for could be found in a single rose or a little water. Of course, I answered. And the little prince added, but eyes are blind. You have to look with the heart. What I want to talk to you about today is, how do you look with the heart? How do you stop the knee-jerk reactions to people and situations around you? How do you do what the little prince adds, looking with your heart, when history tells you that you are in danger if you open your heart? I'm Wendy Yellen. This is The Art of Transformation. And before we continue, if you haven't already liked and subscribed, please do. It helps us reach people like you, and I thank you for that. We're going to talk about filters. And one filter that is kind of common knowledge is what people call rose-colored glasses. And you know that means that somebody's looking at things with a whole lot more positivity than is actually in the situation. And a kind of what used to be called Pollyanna-ish approach to things. And most people, when they say you're looking at that through rose-colored glasses, they don't mean it in a positive way. They mean, hey, you're not really seeing what's going on. More common, though, and more disconcerting and troubling and troublemaking are the filters that we carry from the way that we learn to understand the world through our early childhood and through what we took in about how the world is, about how we're treated, about who we're supposed to be, about how other people, particularly our parents, handle situations, handle difficulties. And these filters go into us completely unimpeded. There's nothing between what we're seeing and our soul, basically. Not our soul really, but our mind and our personality. So we come in, as I see it, we come in organically whole. And then a parent is depressed. An older sibling is ill or dies. A parent has alcohol or abuse problems of their own. Parents are having trouble loving each other. Maybe somebody's absent a lot or dies early. There's financial difficulty, and the way that parents handle it and blame and get depressed or get anxious or feel downtrodden, all of those things come into the child as this is how you respond to trouble. This is how you respond to difficulty, and this is the way the world actually is. We don't know that we're taking in life through those filters because they're the only filters we have. I'll give you a very kind of light example. I grew up in the Northeast, and in my town, there was snow like in April, right? And in early October, it was just snow. And so I remember wearing leggings with my Halloween tutu. It was just like crazy. So when I went to visit, so I thought, this is winter. I knew I was in the Northeast of the United States. I knew that was north, so I knew it was supposed to be cold. So I figured this is what cold in the north is like. It makes sense. And then I'd go to New York City as a young person, very young person, and there'd be no snow on the ground at all. And I would just come from where I lived and there'd be tons of snow. I was thinking, boy, they must be having a really mild winter here. And but then it would happen every time I would go, until finally I realized that even though I was in the northern latitude, that not all northern latitudes are created equal. And just because it was north didn't mean that everybody was going to have the same amount of snow. But that was a revelation to me. And I wasn't stupid, right? It just made sense. So on a much deeper level, that's what we take in. So for example, my mother went back to school for college, and because she didn't finish college before she married my mother, got interrupted. So she decided she wanted a degree, and she went back when I was young. And it took her a long time because she had little kids, but she got her degree. And so for me, the idea of continuous study and even just education per se and changing what you do, both my parents did that in terms, so were all possibilities in life. It made sense. Being an entrepreneur made sense because I saw my father do that. And so, it seemed that's what people do. If he had worked in a factory, then I would probably have also assumed, well, that's what people do. So that's on a very concrete level, but you can see how there are assumptions that come in that are pretty deep. And so my idea, for example, that it's fine to be an entrepreneur because I'd seen it be successful in different ways, would be different from someone where that was never an option. Or if it was an option and it failed, then don't do that because the pathway is strewn with, very explosive devices. And it's a dangerous path. In more subtle ways, we have those filters. How can you figure out if you're having a knee-jerk response to something or you're operating with a filter that you're not aware of? And filters, the deepest ones, we have no idea are going on inside of us. And if somebody else points it out, we think they're wrong. That's how deep they go. And I know that from personal experience as well as working with my clients. So how do we know if we're having a knee-jerk reaction to something, which is not a good thing because then you're not taking in what actually is in front of you, the situation or the person. Your old stuff is running the show inside of you. Creativity is out the window because you're actually not present, and you can't be creative with the situation in front of you if you're not in the situation, if you're not taking it in, if you're instead responding to something that happened 30 years ago and you don't realize it. There are some insidious ways that this can show up. I'm thinking of a young woman I was working with who basically, even though she had her own business, she couldn't get out of her pajamas. And what was devastating her was that she's someone who has a lot of natural energy. And to feel this kind of malaise, this lack of energy, this lack of get up and go that she was accustomed to was terrifying and devastating to her. Now, there were a number of things from the one of the places that she was working. The people there were triggering her feelings of I'm less than, I'm not good enough. And she didn't really realize it, but she was responding to it. And she just kept kind of sinking and sinking and sinking more into herself, and to depression, into her pajamas. And the way they were treating her was so devastating to her because she was used to this from her past. It really reminded her, without her realizing it, of a way that she had been neglected and kind of cast aside by her mother and various men that her mother was with. She wasn't really taken as a person in her own right. They were too involved. Her mother and these men were too involved with themselves, and they couldn't really relate to her. And so she was not seen, not heard, not cared about at a very critical point in her life. Now, knowing this, which of course she kind of did, is, in my opinion, not enough. Because you may realize it, you may get that that's how you were treated, you may get on some level of your mind that this is not how I should have been treated, I deserve better. Maybe you can get that. But the hard part is that inside it taps into a place where you already believe that you're not good enough. You're not worthy of being treated well. Things always happen bad like this to you. And there's no help for it. So the energy that someone else might feel, who has other stuff going on, but somebody else might feel in response to that isn't there. Because, hey, this is me. This is how my world works. You're not thinking this, you're operating that way. I see this all the time. I'm not worth it. It's like an underlying belief that isn't just a thought. It permeates everything about how a person responds. So another person who had other triggers might have gotten out because to them it would have been so obvious that they were in an abusive situation, or they probably wouldn't have gotten into that situation because they don't have the same trigger. But for this young woman, it seemed on some level right. It didn't seem, she couldn't really take it in. Now, the problem with what I'm saying to you is that these kinds of things, as I said before, are not necessarily obvious. They're hidden deep inside, but maybe what I'm saying can just create a bit of a wondering in you, a bit of a questioning in you, that just maybe the situation you're in that's troubling you, maybe there are other possibilities for you besides what you're assuming is the case. Once you actually can see a little bit more than the filter, there's the most beautiful part is that begins to be a sense of hopefulness. And that sparks all kinds of things in a person. And that can open many, many, many doors. Now, what happens when we have these filters that cause knee-jerk reactions? And why is a knee-jerk reaction a problem? Well, a knee-jerk reaction is a problem on many levels. First of all, if you're having a knee-jerk reaction, then you're not really in the situation that you're in. You're in other situations from your past that are triggering you, and you're responding too quickly from an old habit, And probably even you're not even responding to the situation or person in front of you, but you're responding to someone else. That's why someone else from your past. So that's why it's just devastating to a relationship or to your creativity to solve a problem or a situation, because you're missing important pieces of that person or this specific situation that's in front of you right now. Now, this is the human condition. We all do this, and it's easy to be blind about it. And when I saw how I was doing it and how much I was fighting the people who were trying to help me see what I was doing that was going to absolutely devastate me and my life, I began to call it being insistently blind, because I felt that I was insisting on being blind to myself and very stubborn about it. So I'm just trying to crack the door open just a little bit. So you can, next time this happens, maybe you can question, boy, that was awfully fast response and awfully intense and kind of preordained. Maybe you'll get that sense a little bit like, have I been here before? Is this serving me? Is this going to take me where I actually want to go? Or does it just make me feel defended and safer? That's a really big one. And do I actually need to be defended and safer with this person today or this situation today? And if you have even an inkling, a tiny hole, a crack in the armor, maybe you can begin to see that this is a knee-jerk reaction and your filters are running the show and you have some other options. Maybe, at least the opening is there. That's a big one. I'm just going to say a little bit more about filters and then we'll stop for today. So when you have the filters, the way that we use them in eidetics, generally as a father filter and a mother filter, even if one of them wasn't very present. Sometimes it's a step parent, but it's actually usually the parent. And so, for example, when I looked at my money situation years ago through my father's eyes, through my father's filter, which I won't go fully into right now, but when I looked at it through the filter of my father, my options were not only limited, but they took me down a very dangerous path. When I consciously put my mother filter in mind, the options that I saw were much better, and I could feel myself being much more successful. But it felt that in order to get there, that I would have to be so tight and so perfectionistic, and that I would drive myself crazy. Usually, one filter is stronger than the other, and unfortunately, as for us human beings, it's usually the negative one, especially if you're having trouble. So let's say like in finances. So for me back then, my very negative father filter was completely in front of me and therefore running the show. And I was headed towards disaster. Now, I had other options. I had my mother filter that I could call on, but she had so much negative attached to her because she was a perfectionist and she did never feel good about herself in so many ways. She didn't feel good about herself, even though she was wonderful and talented and just like somebody who would really get the job done, but tight. And so I didn't want to adopt or adapt her filter. It felt too negative. So my work was to be able to connect to that, those positive resources that were already in me, but were colored by the way she used them. None of this was happening in my head, but it was all between me and my response to life. My father filter was my knee-jerk response, which really was bad for me. And my mother filter was not accessible, or accessible with perfectionism and lack of self-esteem, sort of. And that I didn't want to go there. So we have more than the negative knee-jerk reaction, but the negative knee-jerk reaction, if it's troubling you in a situation, that one is the road more traveled, the road we're used to. And so the work is to connect to either that other parent's positive filter, or we have other ways to bring in positive filters so that it's not that you're taking on somebody else's abilities, but it's first of all, it slows you down so you're not having that knee-jerk reaction, puts you in touch with your own natural organic resources, allows you to have that much more creativity in your response to the situation, to breathe, to take in what is, and then to access another path, another way to resolve or be with or to address the situation. And what I can tell you for sure is that you have those positive filters inside you already. Is the work is getting back connected to them, not in your head, but a deep, visceral response to them so that they start to come forward without even trying. What people report to me many times, they say, like, I just heard myself saying that, or I saw myself doing it. It kind of shocked me because that was something that I never would have done before. And it was so completely right and good and made me feel wonderful. And it just came through. Wow. That's not surprising. That's who we are when we're not being run by a knee-jerk reaction that's really tough on us. So those are some other possibilities and some beginning to talk about ways to get to them that are already in you. They don't come from me. I don't need to plant them in you. You don't need somebody else to plant them in you. You don't need somebody to make you think a different way. It's just a question of accessing what's already inside. And in this case, it's a different filter, and letting that really negative filter not run the show by putting a stronger one and a more positive one more front and center, and softening the pull of that really negative one. I really hope this has been helpful to you, and I will see you on the next recording. Bye for now.